Mr Mayor, to what extent will the move from City Hall to the Crystal deliver savings in the critical years of 2020-21 and 21-22?
Thanks, Chair. Well, firstly, the lease requires us to serve notice the break clause, I think by September-ish this year. So David can correct me. So the window for us is small. And so the issue isn't just the savings in the 2 years we're concerned about, but in subsequent years as well. And so David Galley or David Bowman will have the figures for 2021, 2022. But just so you know, Chair, if we miss that window of serving notice as we've got the break clause, it's gone. And the rent per annum is, roughly speaking, £11.1 million now. It rises to £12.6 million a year from next December, I think. But I'll let David Bellamy or David Galley come in with the specifics about the 2 years you're asking about.
Which one of you would like to answer?
Shall I go, David? And so, as your question rightly suggests, because we would only exit City Hall at Christmas of next year, 21, then the savings that we'd have on a full year basis will only be roughly a quarter of the numbers the Mayor has set out. So for the impact in 21-22 is obviously going to be limited. So the figure that we quoted in the consultation document on the Mayor's proposal is 55 million over the 5-year period to the December 26, and therefore the savings that would immediately be available for the 2 years and the budget guidance is going to be limited. There'll obviously be the one-off costs that we've allowed for within the 55 million would also need to be incurred for all the relocation, dilapidations works that would be required as well.
And you're quite confident within those figures, are you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, very certain that, it's very simplest, Chair. By getting out of City Hall, then we would save that 12.6 million of figure that presently we'd be paying for rent, rates and service charges, and the accommodation needs of the GLA effectively would then be absorbed into buildings that across the group we would either own or lease. So it is a clear saving by taking out those City Hall costs. The figure we quote is one that obviously allows for one-off costs as I've described, so it brings in the immediate costs of actually looking to have that relocation brought forward. So I'm very confident in the numbers.
Okay, what's the planned capacity of the Crystal building?
So obviously there's work that we are doing now, and obviously work that we're wanting to engage you as Assembly members in the design of exactly what would be in Crystal, how that would meet your statutory needs, obviously the work that we need to do on speccing that out. So the Crystal obviously would be a much smaller space than City Hall. So the number that we're looking at is not yet one that we've finalised.
Okay, well, let's start at a ballpark figure that I've been given twice now of 150. Is that what you're working to?
I think, if I can come in, I think that's an underestimate of where we will end up from what I've seen. Obviously, it's important to remember that figures around the Crystal as it is reflect that the first floor of the building, on the first floor south, is set up to be meeting rooms for hire, and the figures don't really think about using that as office space. So we're told that the floor space at the Crystal is 60% of that at City Hall, and the question really is about how to use that floor space. And clearly there's a trade-off between the number of desks you have, the number of committee rooms you have, the number of other facilities you put in, and that's why it's really important that through this process we engage with Assembly members, engage with relevant staff representatives, and talk about, well, what is the best way to use the space in the building so that we get the right balance. And in thinking about that and thinking about how we use space in the other buildings that we use and will use, we think about the modern world as it is, and how, as we've learnt in the last 4 months, the way that people work is changing, and we don't necessarily need offices just bank on back of desks like you used to get in the olden days.
Yes, David, we understand that completely. But since you've done some sort of financial planning on this, when you did planning on this financially, how many people did you think you would be getting in there? You can't possibly not know, because if not, there can't be a business programme.
The plans are based on space, and the plans are based on having around 80% of the space that we currently have at City Hall across the Crystal and Palestra. And then, as we say, we're into a design process about how best to use this space. And I think we all would recognise, given its interesting and unique shape, there is a fair amount of space at City Hall that is not usable in the way we would like. And so we need to ensure the space we have at the Crystal and Palestra we use well. The other thing that I would say is important about this is that from a GLA group perspective, if we decide to use a little more space in Palestra, or a little less, or a little more space in Union Street, or a little less space in Union Street, that doesn't in any sense change the total saving to the group, because these are buildings that we already occupy. And I know from talking to the fire commissioner, for instance, that they're reviewing how they use Union Street. He expects there to be more space there. If we decided the GLA needed to use a little bit more of that space, it looks like he would be very amenable to that. And none of that, because it's space we are already paying for, impacts on the case here.
Yes, except of course you could rent out the Crystal as we own it. So all of these things do. Well, I'm just trying to get to numbers, because obviously you must have done some work on this, else it would make no sense at all. How many people are in this building or were in this building pre-COVID? How many bums on seats, if you like?
So the building is designed with a capacity of 426, 400 staff, 25 assembly members, 1 mayor. I think we would all recognise that it's been significantly occupied over that, at least in perhaps not in every area of the building, but certainly in some. And I think we are. I'm not sure actually of a formal figure. The chief officer probably has one, but we're probably heading towards 800 people who would be in it in the old world. And then I can see suggestions there should be a bit higher, but remember the very significant teams in terms of housing and land and skills and employment who are based at Union Street, as well of course as the Royal Docks team who are already at the Crystal.
Oh, how many people how many people do we employ?
I think the last figure I saw for people in post was 1,190. I believe there's as you know, Chair, we produce a workforce report every year, sets out the position as the end of March, and that should be, I believe, coming to the Oversight Committee at its meeting on the 21st of July.
No, I recognise 1,190. I didn't recognise 426. And the Mayor clearly didn't, because, and it's good to see you laugh, Mr. Mayor. I've not seen you laugh like that ever, I don't think.
So 426 is I believe, Norman Foster's figure.
Yes, well, we know our architects are, anyway. So we think we'll have 150 in the Crystal, approximately, given that I've been given that number by 2 of your staff.
Well, as you say, that's one possible figure. It depends entirely on the design process. At the moment, there is half of the building has absolutely no office space in it. If we put some office space in there, it will increase. Okay. Yeah, that's why there's a consultation, and the chief officer is encouraging, and I would too, assembly members to go there to look at the space and have discussions. We have people in there looking at how best to use the space so that we get in the people we need to. But also,
Okay.
we don't need the same amount of space we once did. The last 4 months has proven that.
Okay, so how many people do we have in the palestra?
And again, subject to the exact design, we're looking at 300 staff having, or space for 300 desks, I should say, in Palestra.
And Union Street?
My memory of the figure, I think, is 150 as well. But David, you may have an advance on that. But that's my memory.
I think it might be a little higher, I'm not certain.
Oh, interesting. So half our staff haven't got a desk anyway. So tell me, these 300 people in the palestra, how much will that cost us?
So the rent on a full year basis to TfL for Palestra is £2.1 million. But of course, that, as I say, that doesn't cost the mayor anything because the mayor's already paying rent on all of Palestra, which is on a relatively long lease, and so we're committed to paying that money anyway. So in effect, it costs the mayor nothing for the GLA to use that space.
Why don't we all move into the palestra then? Because I hear that the mayor's going to be taking on a secondary office at the palestra, as well as a crystal.
So the mayor obviously has meetings all around the place and has meetings at New Scotland Yard, for instance, from time to time. And so obviously it's a matter for whoever is elected mayor in the elections next year about how they balance the time across the GLA group. Absolutely, the mayor's main office is going to be at the Crystal in this proposal, and what obviously this proposal recognises is the need for the Mayor and Assembly to be based in a place that will have a suitable chamber, suitable committee rooms, and those are not things that can be put into Palestra or into Union Street.
Okay, I have to say, and I have said it before, I think the fact that you don't know how many people could be got into the Crystal when it's going to cost, I think, around £10 million to refurb. We're going to be paying double amounts of money between leaving here and going there. The cost implications...
Let's be clear, there's no suggestion that refurbishing the Crystal will cost £10 million. I don't know where you get that figure from at all.
I got it from a meeting that I was at, behind closed doors meeting.
I think you may be confusing that with the costs that we know we have to pay when, whether it's now or it's in 5 years' time or whenever it may be, we leave City Hall in terms of, because we're in a full repairing lease, making good any issues with the building. And that is something that, because we know it's a cost we're going to incur one day, we've already prudently built up a reserve to meet. And so, that money is there set aside so that prudently for the day when we leave City Hall. That's nothing to do with when we leave or where we go to when we leave.
So for that, if we leave, then we incur the cost, I would have thought.
Yes, if we set ourselves up, Chair, if we set ourselves up and say, oh, actually, no, we're never going to leave City Hall.
No, I'm not suggesting that.
Well, that's the point about this reserve, is that without this reserve, when we came in the run-up to 2026 to negotiations with the landlord, we'd be in a terrible position, wouldn't we? Because
I'm just saying, I agree with you. Stop while you're ahead. I was agreeing with you. The only thing that bothers me, it looks like you've got places for possibly 500, 600 staff, and you've admitted we've got nearly 1,200 on the books. So I just don't know where you're going to be putting them.